I'm Matt.
I'm Kerry.
We are the Stagmer brothers of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite weapons, and some weapons that you've never seen before.
This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged.
This being our 100th episode, we wanted to make sure that we gave the fans something that was one of the very most requested things since the beginning of this entire series. With the addition of Bill and Rick coming in, both being Warhammer 40K fans, it was definitely time to build the chainsword.
This is from Warhammer 40K. We're going to be doing the Blood Angels variant. We're going to start from Still's most powerful arborist saw, the 201. It does still have a tiny chain and a tiny bar. We're going to be going up to a 32-inch bar. It's got a very long blade. We're going to have giant teeth on it, all the covers that you see. We couldn't work from a large chainsaw like you see like this that would already accept this bar because the body's so big and the motor is so big there'd be no way to incorporate it into a sword. As you can see, we have a couple of things to deal with. The locations for the pins that adjust the bar are in different places. We've got a far larger hole here to support this. We also have an external clutch, which is unusual on the saw. That's mostly on these small-bodied saws so that the piece can be pushed out to the outside. And we're gonna have to make a cover for that as well.
Now we're getting ready to plasma cut the teeth out for our Warhammer 40K chainsaw sword. I'm going to cut them out of some old wide bandsaw blade using our plasma table.
John's got to be very careful when plasma cutting this material. It's so thin and it's pre-hardened, so it will warp. So you'll notice that John's going to use the up and down controls to raise and lower the torch height to make sure all his pieces cut true.
What we're doing is we're starting from a couple of different pictures that we have. Using this as our inspiration, at least for the basic artwork. It's going to give us our sizes. What I was able to do was pull that out and kind of give me a spec drawing of what I need. We've put the parts in and laid an actual photograph of the large bar once it was fitted to the chainsaw, and that begins to show us everything that we need to do.
Okay, you see the web from where I cut all the teeth out of this bandsaw blade here. Now we're going to go ahead and lay them out and see what they look like with our blade. These are our individual teeth. You notice they're much larger than what's on the actual blade. And I'm going to weld these onto the supports, something like this. So now I'm going to be preparing the saw blade for John. What I've got to do is take the bottom section of the teeth off of here. That's going to be where John's going to be able to take those new, much larger teeth, TIG them in place. But I'm going to grind these off on the sander and be very careful because it seems like it's fairly dangerous.
Ooh-wee, for once I'm glad not to be doing the grinding on this one. This is not very safe. The connected chain could wrap around the contact wheel and cause some true damage. So Kerry's got to be very careful in doing this grinding and make sure he doesn't kill himself. So this is our 100th episode of Man-at-Arms. I'm blown away. I can't thank you fans enough. We've had a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work. One of my favorite episodes that was truly a game changer for us was the Kill a Kill Scissor Blade. Not only did we get a chance to counter troll some of you guys, but the way we got there was absolutely insane. In my opinion, this is what really took Man-at-Arms to the next level. We've continued to push the limits of what's possible from there on out. John's now going to start attaching each tooth carefully to our saw blade. He's going to use the TIG welder. He's got to make sure he doesn't overburn any of these pieces. We are welding high carbon to high carbon, so afterwards we're going to have to temper the entire thing.
On this chainsaw, we've decided that we're going to do a Blood Angels theme. That being the case, in the images that we found, there's a large teardrop of blood on the side of the sword. So what we're going to be doing is creating a mandrel that will allow us to work glass directly over top to create the large cabochon that we need. And then I'm going to take a bigger piece of steel, set that form on there, make myself something that I can make the bezel with. For right now, what I need to do is just sand this to form so that I can hand it over to Lauren.
I'll be using our largest fly press, along with a block of lead and the mandrel that I created to hammer this on. I'll press this with the brass in between, deep into the lead. This will give me the form that I need for the final bezel.
From here, we're going to work it over a stake. I'm going to have to take these sides and shrink them down until they're actually vertical, coming right off the side. Then once the entire piece is formed like the mandrel, it'll look like this finished piece. We'll cut out the center to expose the glass after we formed it, and then it'll all get mounted on the chainsword.
Kerry has brought over the shape for the Warhammer, and we are going to cut it out so it'll become the bezel. I have a steel mandrel that I've coated, and I'm going to build the glass on top of it, fit it inside there. It's the largest piece I've done to date, so here we go. I'm taking glass rods and melting it to build up on my mandrel. The mandrel has been painted with a kiln wash, which will allow the glass to stick to it, but then release once it's cool. So everything sort of has to be the same temperature.
She builds up enough glass to create this bead. It will be in teardrop form to match the bezel.
I think it's pretty amazing that we're now on our 100th episode. Even though I wasn't on the original show like Matt was, the last 50 or so episodes that we've done with REFORGED have been a great ride. Even if it's not the simplest way or what would be the fastest way to do something, we go out of our way to show you something different each time.
So, John's already finished with the teeth on the chainsword blade. We've already had it nice and ground, they're ready to go. Now we got to take this, fit it to our body. And I have to grind out some of this internal here to have clearance for our teeth. So when we start this thing up, it's going to run smooth and great, and hopefully not malfunction on us.
Okay, now that we have our drawing laid out and put in the CAD system for the chain cover for the chainsaw sword, we're going to go ahead and cut it out of some alloy here and then weld it together.
It's unusual for us to be doing a fully modern build. In this case, it's a futuristic build, so using CNC machinery just makes sense.
All right. John's go ahead and CNC'd out our blade covers for our chainsword. Now I'm going to go ahead and deburr them so I can prep them for welding.
Probably the most excited person in the entire shop for this build is Bill Collison. He's been a huge fan of Warhammer 40K, and every single time somebody comments and says that they want to see a chainsword, Bill points at it and looks at me. We begin the design for the side plate. We're going to cut this initial side plate so that we can build a structural box on the saw. You're going to see several overlays added to give us some different designs. We're also going to include the bezel that has the glass blood drop in the side.
Kerry just got done cutting this out for me on the plasma cutter. This is the first part to the body of our chainsword. Now we're going to go through, clean it up, and make it look pretty.
The build that stands out the most for me is when we did the Kill Bill Katana, because that's the first time we got to approach working with traditional techniques, making our own material and showing the closest possible at the time to the traditional way. And from then on, our episodes start incorporating more and more and more as we gain more and more courage and confidence in showing the viewer that we can master some of these nitty-gritty details of the profession. This is green screen right here, and our anvils are made out of ceram wrap, and Matt is not an actual person, he is a marionette,
So you saw where we made the teeth and welded them onto the chain. When you're working with high carbon steel especially, we're worried about something called the heat effect zone. The heat effect zone is this area right where we've welded, and it'll make these pieces brittle since they're high carbon steel. And so it's very important that you do something about that. You can either take a torch over them to temper them. In this case, we'll do it the very easiest way, which is we're just gonna put it in this toaster oven that we got from Goodwill. Set this in here,
set it for 400 degrees, and then we're just going to set the timer and let it run for an hour.
Okay, we took our plasma cut side plates from the guard shield. I went ahead and put some aluminum spacers and a few bolts and some clamps to hold it all together, keep it aligned up nice. Next step, we'll take the top plate, lay it on top of our spacer. I'll tack weld it into place, then full weld it. Once it cools, the guys will be able to go grind it and blend the welds out.
I've now got the large bar fit. It's working, the adjusters are working. Got the chain on, teeth in place on the chain. The chain has been tempered, so hopefully the teeth won't just come apart on it. I'm gonna run it a little bit and then shut it down, because from here I've got to take the whole thing apart and build the main body for it, and I won't be able to run it until the very end.
This is the encasement for the blade. It's all nice and welded up. It's gonna protect the user from the teeth coming across the top. Looks great. Bill went ahead and relayed what he wanted for the eagle heads, so I drew a pair of them up in AutoCAD. Now we're gonna cut them on the plasma.
Being a 40K player myself over the years, everybody knows when you start to do your armies, you get to start to personalize them. So I had Matt cut out the eagle heads I wanted for our chainsword cover. Now I'm going to head clean this up, and then also clean up all the welds on this one. So once I have my eagle head cleaned up and get it chiseled out, we can attach it here to the front of our chainsword.
In the Warhammer 40K universe, one of the enduring symbols of the Imperium of Man is the Imperial Eagle. I've selected a pattern to put onto the front of the plate that I'm then going to take a set of chisels and cut a relief design into to give it some really good dimensionality and aggressive looks.
Over the last 2 years, fans have asked to see a walkthrough behind the scenes look at our shop. So we're gonna do that for you guys right now. We're gonna start off here in the machine shop. We got the lathe behind me. Bob's over here doing a little milling on our fetter blades. Walk with me and we'll go to the grinding shop. My domain, we have lots of 5 horsepower Vader sanders. Over here, we have our CNC plasma machine. Do a lot of dishing over here. This machine, John's new baby. We got a tabletop version of a Vader. It's variable speed, so we can run lots of littler wheels and stuff. This is John's welding room. This way is the forging shop, where Ilya does most of his magic.
The next stage of evolution on our Warhammer chainsaw sword is to take the blade cover, which you saw us fabricate earlier, and I want to go ahead and weld these little eagle overlays to the side so the guys can go ahead and brass them.
Now that we have the eagle heads attached to the cover of the blade, it's time to lay on that brass color. You can use a brass wire wheel and a torch and just heat up a specific area and brush it on.
We're carving a skull to be cast for the back of the chainsword from Warhammer 40K. I'm using really wide burrs, some wax burrs and some actually steel cutters, because they have very wide teeth to them and they won't load up. We're doing more of a fantasy type skull as opposed to a completely anatomical skull, being that it's on the 40K Warhammer build.
Rather than simple fabrication, we felt this guard needed more form. Ilya now goes to the Nasal hammer and forges this out.
It's been a real pleasure working here with the Man-at-Arms Reforged series at Baltimore Knife and Sword. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years already. That's a lot of individual projects to design and build. One of my favorite episodes was the Halo Gravity Hammer, mainly because of all the little individual tedious parts that needed to be assembled, as well as the sheer size and weight of the device.
Lauren pulls the 1,000-degree flask from the furnace and places it in the casting machine. I then bring in 2100-degree Evador bronze and pour it into the cavity. The vacuum assist will force the material into the small areas where the teeth are. We allow the bronze to drop below 1,000 degrees for safety. We quench the entire thing into water and reveal the bronze.
James Hughes is the owner and operator of Bethesda Tattoo and a longtime friend of ours, and we thought his style of painting would be spot on for this build.
I've prepped the surface, laid down contact paper, and then I've gone and sketched on the banner. I like to draw banners that have a little more flow to them so they look like they're flowing on the surface. And now I'm gonna cut the contact paper, start spraying some different coats of paint to get some different effects, and then we'll go in and do some lettering.
So we have the bronze cast for the pommel of the chainsword from Warhammer, and as you can see, the investment mix wasn't quite where it needed to be. That's not unusual. We usually do have some finishing work to do. This one has a little bit more than usual, so we're actually going to recarve some of these areas and then redetail them and get him back to a finished product.
My favorite all-time moment was throwing the Captain America shield when it went straight through the plate glass window right on the mark, because it just felt really good, and we'd worked really hard on that season. I think that was our first season, so it was the first time we'd all done it, and hopefully it gets to destroy more things.
We're revealing the base of the banner here.
Just like old school bombers painting their own tag on the side of their airplanes, that's kind of what we're going for here.
We'll go back in, sand it out a bit, give it a little bit of texture. Then we'll begin the pinstripe process of the outer part of the banner and then the lettering.
Now that we have our box fully welded, we're going to start putting our overlays on. I want to start with the side panel. The first overlay will go on. Something like that.
Now that Ferenc has recut the definition in these teeth and down the jawline, I'm able to come in with Scotch-Brite and then go to the buff to finish this out.
All right, so we're now at the stage where the banner is 90% done. Basically, we've got 8 letters Invictus. I went through with a pen and sort of dotted where each letter is going to fit. Now we're going to go through and paint it on.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of people in Hungary that are like, yeah. It's been an honor, and it's been a lot of fun working with Man-at-Arms. I've been working projects with Baltimore Knife and Sword for over 20 years. I've known these guys, some of the best artisans in their field in the country and in the world, actually. The jade work on the Green Destiny was really great.
This is something that would normally take about 2 to 3 weeks to do. We literally had to make that happen in a matter of days. So we've got to be right on top of things all the time.
We have the main chainsaw guts here inside our outer casing now. You can see the bar over here. Next step is we have our side cover. This will screw on for a couple of anchor points that we have. Here's our handle. This will be attached right into the back. And our throttle will slide on the front of the handle there. We have the bar lever, which will be attached on the bottom after the fact. For the pull start, we're going to use a skull head. Put a hole in the top, the cord will come through, and you'll be able to pull it to start. Then we have our chain cover. This will sit on top of the chain like that. Final piece is this guy, and he will be attached onto the side. And now we're ready for the final assembly of the Warhammer 40K Chainsword.
This was a very difficult and complicated build. It required the skills of almost every single person in the shop throughout the entire shooting period. Now that we have this weapon together, it's really amazing just how it looks and how it feels in your hand when you rev the motor. It's awesome.
Click here to subscribe, or click here to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching Man at Arms Reforged. We need to know what you want the guys to build, so tell us in the comments below what weapons you want to see next.